big Nationals party room meeting on Sunday. The key issue is going to be what Australia is going to pledge to in 2030. 2050 is fine, but where the rubber meets the road is 2030. Where do you sit on whether Australia should either increase its commitment, so that's a firm commitment, or just leave it as a projection and not touch the 26 to 28% at the moment we are pledging to reduce our emissions by?
Well, we don't want to count our chickens before they hatch, but we've certainly got a great track record compared to the rest of the world in what we've actually done, rather than making promises 30 and 40 years away, which many other countries have, but haven't delivered nearly what Australia has done. Look, everyone in the National Party is committed to making the environment better, and we're supporting our current target. As has been pointed out, we haven't seen the details of what is proposed. We will have a sensible conversation. We're just worried about unintended consequences, like what happened with the Kyoto commitment. There was a huge covenant put on a heap of agricultural land. It put covenants on forestry, which were unintended, even though the IPCC supports sustainable managed forestry because it's a great carbon sink. We could increase our capture and storage considerably if we followed what were historical practices rather than locking up forests as unmanaged forestry estates. Look, there's so many things we're doing. Agriculture's already on board.
Yeah.
So we will discuss what is being proposed, and we will make sure that the industries that have fed and clothed Australia and developed wealth for the nation and allowed us to have a modern industrial economy aren't disadvantaged by
so just on that,
30-year-away
though, when you talk about industries, is it important to note that there will be changes? Industries change all the time. Workers disappear from one and go to another. And it's not a case of we can't lose a coal worker, but we want to make sure the regions overall will have workers, even if that means they're switching from coal and they're making, say, renewable hydrogen in the future. Like, there's no problem with one industry hurting as long as the regions overall can see that they're not going to be a disadvantage. Is that where you come from?
Well, not necessarily that spin on it. We're just concerned about not just regional jobs. We're worried about the whole Australian economy with regards to fossil fuels. By all means, the world is switching away from it, but they're going into things like nuclear, Tom, because they realise you need a baseload system. But we have a ban on that, so we have to rely on technology to have a baseload power system. As you know, I have advocated personally for a change in that policy, but we're dealing with what we have now, and that is a huge part of the industrial and modern economy, like Sydney, like Melbourne, like Brisbane. There is, even when the lights are off, there's still huge amounts of electricity.
I want to get to nuclear in a moment. When you say put that spin on it, what are you saying? Coal jobs won't... We can keep the same number of coal jobs today and have the same number in 30 years. That's spin, isn't it? That's not going to happen.
Look, all industries change and modify over time, but we supply energy, either gas or coal, to a couple of billion people. We export our energy to other nations. They require it, and they have required it forever. So we will keep exporting to them. They won't require it the same type forever.
Will they?
I know they may adjust over time too, but we don't need to have policies that could change 10 times over in the space of 30 years, locked in now. Right. We're always looking to the future, but we want to make sure that in this global rush to make extraordinary commitments without a detailed plan of how we're actually going to do it, without, I said, disrupting our cities,
well, let me just say,
our
we're nearly
whole
out of
way
time.
of
Let me
life
just ask you this finally,
and regional Australia
on nuclear,
jobs.
David Gillespie, because you've been a proponent of it in the past. With these small modular reactors that a lot of people are talking about, in terms of getting these in Australia, we have a ban on nuclear energy at the moment. Is it about waiting until these are actually economic and then you can say, here's a solution, it's base load and it's going to be cheaper, and then you might convince voters, because at the moment they haven't proven anywhere to be a cheaper form of base load power?
Well, the cheapest electricity in Europe is in France, and they have nuclear energy. Now, Tom, as you understand, as Minister that oversights and supervises radiation and nuclear safety, because I administer Panzer, I've looked at this very closely. The SMR technology is safe and it is very economic.
It's not
design
economic
of
yet, is it? It's not.
It is
small modular. The actual builds that have been completed are not yet economic.
Well, they are. They've been operating very economically, running icebreakers. There's some of them operating in Russia on pontoons, powering remote areas. There's a whole range of that technology, from 5, 10 megawatt reactors that would fit inside a couple of containers, through to 70, 80 megawatt units and up to 300. But it's a very mature technology. It's just how that's packaged together makes it passively safe. So it doesn't rely on secondary systems should they need to turn them off.
All right, maybe running an icebreaker a bit different to a whole economy. Anyway, we might pick it up again another day. David Gillespie, thanks for your time.
Thanks very much, Tom.